Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. Like water when I'm thirsty. Drink. You're like water when I'm thirsty.
Welcome to Water for the Thirsty. For those of you who join us for the first time, we meet here to do 5 things. To study, because we want to get to know Jesus better. Once we study, we often have questions because we don't ever understand everything. So we bring those questions and we create a forum where we could ask questions without being judged. And then we dialogue. And sometimes we disagree, but we respectfully disagree. And but we come to some common understanding that we can then apply to our everyday lives. And then we try to share it with others, which is why you guys are here, because we are hoping that this will encourage you to read and study your Bible more. In fact, it's not just study your Bible more, but to spend time with God on a consistent basis, and then have it be more accessible so that it makes sense to you, or that even if doesn't make sense, that you feel comfortable processing through it and asking questions and reaching out and dialoguing and inquiring and sharing and going through the cycle again. With us tonight, we have Rondell, who's visiting us from Trinidad. We also have Randy, who's back from a small vacation.
Sabbatical.
We also have Shanice, who's a regular with us, Sharika, Din, and Kenrick. We're following a Bible reading plan. That's what we're studying. waterforthethirsty.com. There's a link that you can download it, but if you really want a hard copy, you can hit me up. My name is Jared. My email address is info@waterforthethirsty.com, and you can hit me up there and I can see how I can get one of these hard copies to you. The reading plan since last we met took us through Zechariah, Ezra, Esther, Revelation, the end of John,
Nehemiah just started.
and we just started Nehemiah. So that's where we are. Conversations are going to come out of that depending on where we are and how we felt about it.
Psalm?
Yeah, of course, we've been reading Psalms along
Forever.
as well, because it's 150 days of Psalms. All right, so now that we have that out of the way, Randy, why don't you kick us off by telling us where the readings took you this week?
Okay, so on Wednesday, I posted on my Facebook timeline Psalm 123 just because I liked it. I thought it was good. I read it in the morning. I said, well, this is really appropriate for me. As an African-American man, thinking about the world in which I live, thinking about the students that I teach, who are primarily African-American kids, how do we process this? How do we think about ourselves in this country in this time with all these, this unrest, this social unrest? And I posted that. Then that afternoon, I got a text message from my friend who said that the guy who choked Eric Garner was not indicted, and I was upset. And I posted the second half of it again, and I posted this: have mercy upon us, O Lord, have mercy upon us, for we have had more than enough of contempt. Our soul has had more than enough of the scorn of those who are at ease, of the contempt of the proud. And the idea to me that as a Christian, I'm now faced with making serious determinations about the way I relate to people and the way I perceive people, whether I judge them or not. How do I navigate the world in which I am as an African American man, although my great grandmother is a white woman and my mother is Native American? How do I navigate this world as a Christian? How do I navigate this reality that we're facing as Black people, as white people, as people as Native people, as Asian people, as every kind of person that we can think of who has to now deal with the idea, oh, there's a group of people who are really being treated poorly. Am I able to even speak to that? As a Christian, what is my role? And then as not only a Christian, but then as future parent, how far do I go in trusting God to keep my kids safe? Do I take measures? What measures do I take? What do I do to make sure my family's okay in this country right now? Suppose I have male children. What do I do with my kids? I mean, this is real. And so as I was reading this this week, that was really heavy on my heart. How do I make this not simply make relevant sense in a conversation, but relevant sense to my thoughts of the future and my thoughts of my present right now in the current political and social climate we're facing.
Did you land anywhere?
Brother, I'm still looking, but because I'm in many ways, my personal experience is very, very different from a lot of people. I grew up in England with I was the only black kid in my high school, intensely racial situation, intensely racial. The first words that I heard from a student contained the N-word as a part of that sentence. Very first words I heard in the school. Went to South Africa for a little while, for about a month and a half when I was a kid. My dad who grew up here in the 60s, was in tears in a room. I was like, why are you crying? He said, because this feels like it did in the States when I was growing up. Came back here in the 90s, there's a lot of consciousness. All of a sudden, we're not thinking about that anymore. Everyone's making money. Everybody's doing gangster stuff. And the whole culture shifted from this very conscious thing, fight the power in 1992 to...
Make money.
Yeah, making money. And being a black person was like, okay, you're making money now. That's fine. And all of a sudden now, I'm telling my father of a comment I saw on a Live Well Black where a girl said, my dad and I were pulled over last year. He got a new car and the cop made him explain to him where he got the money for the car. And my dad said, wait a minute, it happened to me and my father in 1949.
Wow.
He got a new car and I was 9 years old and we stopped and the police were telling my father, where'd you get this money? This is full circle and we're still, this is 2014. We're still dealing with the same stuff. How do I teach my students, primarily African Americans, not just, forget it, that they're Asian, they're white, they're primarily African American, but how do I teach my kids how to look at this from what God would have us look at it as, and being realistic about it, not just pandering to, let's pray for people. I think Christianity is more radical than that, but how radical does it get? Mm-hmm. How far do I go with this?
Any thoughts? Wow.
Sorry to lay all of that. I mean, it's a lot, but it's really what I was thinking.
But it's not in full.
Why can't we get your thoughts?
Because it's not.
No, I want to know your thoughts.
No, but
for that very reason.
No, we're not going to go into it. That's like a whole nother. That's not for thirsty.
Are you gonna give us your thoughts or not?
I'm not.
Okay. Well, I have 2 boys.
Wow.
And I know this might not seem like a lot to some of you, but it does seem. But it is important because we drive many places for family reunions, and they ask questions. They have to watch the news. They do current events, and what I've explained to my children, because some people say I'm not racist. I have a race preference. I believe I'm not racist at all, and I tell my children this: there are good people who sometimes do bad things, and there are bad people who sometimes do good things. And when I open the word to them and show them that we're not wrestling against flesh is just a distraction. If everyone were the same exact color, we would find something. We would find some kind of difference.
We do.
To make ourselves feel better than the next person. Then it would be north, south, east, west. I'm north, you're south. If we were all from the same exact place, we would find height. We would find some distinction to try to elevate ourselves above one another. And that's because of sin and evil. And I explain it to my children that you're going to find people who look like you, who look like me, and you're going to expect them to treat you very well. And you're going to find people who don't look anything like you, who are going to treat you a lot better. But it's not look, color, shape, size. It's character, it's heart. And we have to feel the spirit of people. They're people who love the Lord, and we're going to have to love them and help them to understand even more about God. And when they make mistakes, we're going to have to forgive them. And there are people who don't love the Lord, but they're just going to try to nicely influence us. And we're going to have to tell them, leave my house. And so striking the balance is, tell them what God said. God said, it looks like flesh and blood, but it's spirit. And as long as you realize that, you'll not be as fooled as often as other people are.
I like that, Shanice. I like that.
I don't. Well, I was gonna say I don't feel like that was really what I was asking though. I'm not talking about in a general sense. I'm talking about faced with the murder of a person on TV and the fact that if I get stopped by the police, that could be me. That's real life.
Yeah.
It's not. Well, there's evil people in the world. No, this is like I could be killed and shot. What is my response to that? It's not.
Well, how is that different?
No.
But I'm just saying, how is that different from I could go down the road and get hit in an accident by a car in an accident, or I could get on a plane and the plane could crash, or I mean, there's so many things that could.
Right, because if I go to,
or I could go to visit Rondell in Trinidad and I meet some nice girl. I'm married now, but I could have gone to Trinidad and met some nice girl who lived in a piece of town I shouldn't probably be, and I get killed. I mean, there's so many situations that...
And they look just like you.
...that can threaten my existence. Why would one take precedent over the other is a question that I'm asking.
Because I don't think that... I think that what we're looking at is what Jesus talked about when he said, I came to bring justice to the oppressed. I came to feed the needy and the poor and those who have needs of a physical nature, financial needs, spiritual needs. Matthew 25 talks about the fact that we will not be in heaven if we do not serve those who have less. Now, who are those people? How do we identify those people? Let's look and see who's being shot and killed. That's real. And so when we talk about oppression and we're looking at somebody get killed on YouTube and nothing happens to the person that killed them, we're like, okay, maybe this has to do with what? We can look the definition up and there's a pretty good simulacra of that definition. It might just simply be something that happened, 60 years ago where somebody got lynched on a tree. I mean, I don't know, maybe and maybe as an African American I have a sensibility about this that may be different. I don't know.
And that's why maybe I tried to keep it short,
right?
But maybe I wasn't clear to you when I was telling you. I tell my children, you are going to deal with racial issues,
right.
People who don't look like you, who are going to oppress you. But I also have to teach my children, you're going to have to deal with people who look just like you, who will do the same thing, and you won't be able to pull a race card for it. Because the truth is, you have both. And when you're raising, because you said your future children, you have both. We're more sensitive to one over the other because you feel the oppression when someone tries to be better. But the truth is, evil is so evil that you're going to feel bad no matter what.
Right, and I think that what I'm saying is that as an explanation, and I already understand what I think is.
You want to say how to deal with it.
Yeah, so now, as a parent, as a thinking person, looking at the future of my kid here, what preparations do I have to make? What do I have to say? I might have my kid know all the memory verses. My kid could be walking home from school and somebody stops him and says, what are you walking down the street with your hands in your pocket for? It happened the other day. Mm-hmm. And he's like, what are you talking about? And then all of a sudden he's no longer living. I mean, this happens.
Yes, it does.
So the idea is, as a Christian, and maybe my question wasn't clear. As a Christian, what do I find in the Bible that equips me to deal with straight up hatred toward me and my family? Now, and I'm not saying that, my answer to that question would be, can I love them in spite of that? Can I love someone who is spitting in my face? Can I love that person? Can I love someone who punches me in my face?
And what does love mean to that person?
Right. If someone punches me in my face...
You've already seen that example in the Bible.
Right. And so my point is, though, connecting that to these feelings now. Connecting that to the helplessness I feel as a black man when I'm thinking, man, we can't even get a brother tape getting murdered and something happened to the dude who did it. That's crazy. That doesn't make sense. It's like that in a modern world, that doesn't make sense. To watch someone be murdered on television and the person who, and let me not use the word murder, I can use another word. When someone killed on television by a person not using the best practices of their profession. Can we say it that way?
That's fine.
And that person then does not have to even have an inquest into what happened and have to answer for that to a public setting. That person never has to answer to that. That's a problem in any society.
Mm-hmm.
The Bible, in the Bible they had cities of refuge. It would be the equivalent of what happens to a lot of people in America right now without having to run into some place and be separate from their families. They get married. They get money. You know what I'm saying? So you have a person who's dead. You have a 12-year-old kid who's dead. You have people who are dying. This isn't an abstract concept. This is a real life. I have students of mine who have been killed in the black on black violence that raises our community to the ground. Fine. Most people get killed by people from the same ethnic group. That's not even a new thing. But when it's something that's targeted, when it's something that we're looking back in time, and my father saying, this happened 60 years ago, man. The same thing. How 60 years down the road are we in this nation saying we're Christians? In this nation saying we're going to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ when we're watching people be killed? What is our role? What is our role in that? What is our role in that conversation?
I'm curious. What is our role, seeing as we know it's going to get worse?
Yeah.
If it's not going to get better, should I even spend time on it? That's a question that comes to mind. I'm not saying that we shouldn't. That's a thought that comes to mind.
What does it mean to spend time in it? See, because I think that the gospel is about oppression, and the gospel is about people being pulled from a place that says, I have no hope at all because I cannot see a future, to say there is a future. And I think that...
But there's a future here.
No, there is a future. There is a gospel. I think this right now would be the prime time for me to say, yo, do you know who Jesus Christ is? Do you really know who he is? I don't know. Does it make sense?
It makes sense.
You're still not saying what you think.
Because it's not the forum.
I'm here.
Okay.
For me.
I got you.
Like, not
I
real.
got you. No, I
Just for me.
understand.
Well, let's table this particular one for the afterglow when we can feel more comfortable to...
Nice.
Or maybe when the cameras go off. we could just talk more about it. But thank you for sharing that, Randy. I like how you were able to draw on what was in the word from the Psalm to the things that were happening around you and make it introspective and something that you can apply to your life. That was beautiful. Any other thoughts on what was happening in your readings this week? Din?
I got stuck on Revelation. I've always loved Revelation. Just wanted to see, what the end will be.
Where did you get stuck?
Not stuck as in.
He's fascinated.
In your head.
Oh, you're fascinated. You were enjoying
Yes.
it.
Yes.
Okay. You were enjoying it.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. But I think to the issue at hand that Randy spoke about, I had the same reaction to where, I was bubbling, I was boiling, and somewhat so. I don't even want to share what went through my mind, because where I grew up, usually stuff like that happened. The person who did it would be no more the next day. So
Anonymously.
right, and that's pretty common. And when we have a legal system that's supposed to execute the right or the appropriate judgment, for something that's so blatant and as clear as day. There was no guessing what happened. It's just obvious. It's you kind of question, as you have, what do we do? And while I was bubbling, Ecclesiastes 5:8 came to mind, where basically say, if you see the oppression of the poor and the violent perversion of justice and righteousness in a province, do not marvel at the matter. For high officials watches over high official, and higher officials are over them. So I was like, well, what can I say about that after that coming to mind? But it's tough. It's tough just watching it and seeing different clips. Well, the same clip, but as you see the tail end of the clip where the same cop was like waving the camera kind of thing. You're like, man. So it's one of those things. But more important things, just reading Revelation, I never really got Zechariah.
You didn't get Zechariah?
No, I read it, but I'm like, what? I've read that thing a lot of times. I'm like, I don't know. I'll go back to Revelation. It's more interesting.
Zechariah is one of those books for me, and I'm glad I'm reading other things alongside.
Right,
Because if it was just Zechariah, I wasn't sure I would push through
Just to keep going.
to the end of it.
Revelation was really good for me, staying with him, because it started off saying hi to everyone. It started off saying hi, I see you in those churches. I know you're doing good. You need to work on this. I see you. I know you're doing good. You need to work on this.
So John,
I see you too.
Hi.
I see all seven of you. Hi, how you doing? You good? And then it turns into this nightmare that you want to keep watching, because you're like, is this a dream or is it a nightmare? Where you know, a beast is unleashed, and you have to have in your head exactly that. When we read the Bible, we don't have, like you said, we're not scholars, so we don't have all the explanations. So when you read something, you see a woman, you don't see a building, a church. You don't see a group of people. You see a woman, and you see her pregnant, and you see a beast with all his heads going after her. But the beast, before he went after her, you see him much bigger than her, because his tail pulled down a third of the stars, and stars are huge and bright and strong and brilliant. Okay, I have an animated imagination.
You did.
Yeah, it's
But-
But it's good. I mean, I'm seeing it all.
You should talk to Randy. Randy was giving us a description there. I was like, what is he talking about? He has
Yes,
some comic
because-
book that he's doing.
Yes, oh my goodness.
I was thinking this would be a tough
it's so
comic to
gra-
make Revelation into like an anime. It would be
It's-
tough, man.
My only
it's so-
criticism is
it's
that it's
graphic.
not sequential.
Yeah.
But I think it is.
It is what it does is, but you know what?
How's it sequential?
What is sequential? If you see television shows, it'll start you here,
Exactly.
and then it'll be like, bam, back to when. Oh, and this is what happened before.
Yeah, but there's-
And then, I mean, we Star
that show-
Wars,
Yeah, but you
everything.
get the this is what happened before.
So,
Yeah.
so
No,
what
but
do you say?
sometimes-
Like when you watch How to Get Away
Like
with Murder.
in Revelation,
You know what happens.
in
That's-
Revelation, it talks about like today, like it's talking about
What
the
did we read
chick,
today?
the woman.
The woman.
Right, running
Right.
out to the desert, right?
Revelation 12 was saying,
The chick.
Talking about
going
this
shit.
chick that. But what I'm saying,
But wasn't it exciting when you were reading it?
yeah,
wasn't
but
it
it
exciting.
started,
Exciting.
And then, like,
the
oh my goodness,
Nothing about
run,
it.
woman, run! And then she's giving birth, and the
I
beast
didn't
is
think about
waiting.
run, no.
The beast is waiting to like eat her child. It's
y'all
like
need
gruesome.
to go read this because
is
I didn't get
gruesome.
any of this.
And then, but as her child comes out, this male child comes out. The male child is protected from the beast and elevated to the heavens. It's just yeah.
so,
Okay, so
the thing, go ahead.
everybody seems excited about Revelation. I did not like it. I still don't like it. I said that in my video last Monday. I don't like Revelation. I'll tell you why, and I've summed it up in a wonderful sentence.
Okay.
I don't know what's figurative from what's literal, and it really upsets me.
There's
Because
nothing
no,
I think it is.
no, there has to be some elements that are literal. For
I think it's
example,
literal.
when John says, "I see someone that looks like Jesus," bruh, you were just with Jesus. I think you should know what he looks
He's
like.
dreaming though.
I'm not sure. Even so, I just feel like you should know what this
He's
man
far
looks
There's
like.
sometimes when you're dreaming
He's
that you don't
far off.
see
Start there. Okay, so is this figuratively Jesus or not Jesus?
like,
So, but like doesn't necessarily mean figurative.
but he's sitting on the same place. He's doing all that.
so is he
you're making
Jesus or he
the-
not Jesus?
I'm not gonna argue with your.
think
I don't
that-
know. I'm not
but think
arguing.
about
What I'm
this, though.
saying,
Think
what I'm
about-
saying is this: there are pieces of Revelation when people try to explain it that we're saying is figurative, and other pieces that we're saying are literal. And I'm saying to myself, why is it that Revelation, one of the most difficult books in the Bible, are we leaning on figurative because it's difficult to understand? Or are we leaning on figurative because there's somewhere in there that I just didn't get to yet that tells me, oh, that was all figurative?
I'm leaning on figurative because I haven't seen a dragon with a tail long enough to drag out one
And
third of the
seven
stars.
heads. And
So what's the
and
purpose?
horns and all that stuff.
So is this just to heighten my imagination to keep me reading, or
No,
like does it? What purpose
Well-
does this all serve outside of dragon tail, baby coming out?
Dragon
about-
tail.
You
What's the
know, I
point?
don't.
I know.
What's the point
Hold
of
on,
I-
hold on, Randy. One thing I want to add, not just for you, but for people who are watching. We started this maybe in August. We were like in the middle of the Bible. But if we make it around to the other side and come back to the top, you'll see that God doesn't really, he very rarely talks directly in direct language. He's imagery, symbolic kind of guy. Almost all his messages, and you can start thinking
lot of
and
them.
And we
reflecting
discussed
on them.
that, and we discussed
He
that.
always gives all his he gave a powerful message to Nebuchadnezzar, so powerful that Nebuchadnezzar didn't make sense of it, couldn't understand what was happening. It woke him out of his dream, and he threatened to kill people until they could tell him what he dreamt. And God sent him it was a clear, powerful message, and he sent it twice in 2 different forms.
I'm
saying that to say, when John is saying this here, it's much of the same thing.
And I understand that it's something that has to come full circle, but what I'm thinking from the perspective of a new believer or someone who's restarted, and I'm in Revelation. This is the most distracting and discouraging book I've ever read in my life.
Wow.
Like, I from the analytical mind, I just what like literally I just was just like, what am I reading? I don't know I don't understand the purpose of this book outside of imagery that scares the bejesus out of me, because as I told Jared earlier, I don't want to see a Jesus that looks like this. I don't want to go through all of this.
He
Heaven
looks
doesn't
good in
no,
it.
He doesn't.
Jesus looks
It's
fine.
a dragon.
It does.
He has a gold statue. He has a long
Listen,
white
clearly
robe.
we like different cartoons as children. I mean, and that's cool. I'm okay with that. Me, I have no interest in this. So, and I have friends who I've pulled in to read this with me, and they're like, "Oh, Sharika, I've never even made it chapter 10 because I just get discouraged and I don't know what's going on. I'm just as confused. I just closed the book." And that's where I was. I mean, I'm with everyone because I'm determined to read it, and that's what I said I was going to do. But I'm not getting what you guys are getting at all. I'm sorry.
I think that one of the things that happens when we start...
Huh? I like him to be quiet.
He talks low and then we start.
Like he's on and he's like, I think.
No, you know what it is? I'm a teacher, man. I can con people to listen to me for long periods of time. No, I think that when we look at mythology of any type, any kind of mythology, when you're talking about mythology, you're talking about someone trying to express something they can't really explain. It's like me trying to explain to someone from 1850 how a car engine works. I have to try to make it make sense, but
yes.
I'm trying to figure it out. Like, how do I make this make sense to these guys? And I'm like, okay, maybe I can think of this car as you got to feed this dragon.
But for us, it actually would make more sense than the people that were
back then.
200 years ago, because we're actually
no.
For them,
they have
dragons. We have
no. What I'm saying is, if God actually said what all these things were, because we have the privilege of looking back and saying, oh, this is A, B, C, and D, as opposed to someone there, if he actually said what it was, they're looking in the future saying, this is what this is supposed to be, and this is what it looks like, and da-da-da.
Think about if God told us exactly what it was, then everybody in the world who interpreted this would be looking for those exact things to happen. And when they happen, they would say, this is the sign that God told me, so let's do this. That's insanity. Like, you can't, there's certain stuff.
No.
There's certain stuff.
Matthew 24,
it's simple because
look for these exact things, and you'll know
Genesis it talks about
and then most of those things, like,
angels
when you go through it, a lot of those things have already happened.
Yeah, because the war in heaven, that was at the beginning.
Nope.
So these are things that, before Adam died, he knew about. You understand?
You're talking about Revelation.
Yeah, huh? I'm saying what's happening in Revelation. That it says he took right. Like an example is the dragon took 1/3 of the stars with his tail.
This is what Lucifer did?
Yes.
Yes, and that's all it's doing. It's more or less making a symbolism of
and
here's the thing, because one of the things I like about Sharika is her style. One of. See, don't start now. It won't be nothing.
One.
Is that her? Her style is pretty straightforward. Don't go through all of this stuff. Tell me what you want, and that's how it is. Make it clear. That's who she is. My son and myself, and I see it in myself now because my son is like this, and it becomes clearer. He needs the animation for clarity. If you tell him just do this, it's like boring water to him. But if you animate it, it's like, wow, that is awesome. My son was like, can I have another one of these Bibles? And I'm just like, what? But I got him the animated ones, and they come in series. And so for some people, it's like, listen, this Bible could be 1/10 of the size. Sum it up for me, please. because that's certain people's personalities. Sum it up for me, please. But the Lord loves us enough that he caters to all of our personalities so that we can all get what we need from the Bible. And it's all the same thing, but it caters to our differences. So if you don't like the way Revelation tells it, that's okay, because you got it in Genesis.
But see, but my problem is, while I don't like the way it's being told, I'm not able to make those connections. For example, the dragon and the tail and the 1/3. Now that you said it, that makes sense. It never clicked in the mind here. I'm not making the connections, and I think the frustration lies in the fact that I can't. What did this happen yet? Where am I in the history of things?
And that's why you can't forsake the assembling of like believers, because you need other people to discuss it and get to the point. Sometimes we like to go and hermit ourselves and be like, just me and God, because I don't feel like dealing with none of y'all. But the truth is, you're not going to get it then.
Well,
not necessarily.
That's one thing.
John was by himself.
Right.
Not all the time. John had Jesus. Hello.
Yeah, but okay.
So he
There you go.
So he had Jesus.
John had Jesus.
That's what he just said. He wanted to go with Jesus.
I understand what you're
Yes,
saying.
but I'm saying,
I
but he
understand
had
what you're
Jesus. He had someone at first to bring it at some
So
point.
you have Jesus.
And then another point, but he wasn't
saying,
always
he
by
said he-
himself.
I know, but
There were times he was by himself.
On Patmos?
You have like the best. You have the best car
Wasn't
ever.
by
Like
himself.
Kenneth, you have the best car ever to ride, ever. And so now you're like, how do I tell someone else about this best car that I have? And this is what I'm saying about the myth part. You're trying to now explain to someone what kind of car you were driving, and they don't even know what a car is. Mm-hmm. And so you're like, okay, so
everybody
there was this donkey that I liked,
and
right?
dragons.
There was a donkey that I liked,
not everybody,
and right. But think about it. We're able to look at it because if I said to you, it had a V6 and a really nice exhaust, and it had a little nitro joint. If I said that to you, right?
I'm on it.
You would understand that. But if I said those words to someone back then, they're like, I don't even know what language you're speaking. But if I speak it in the language of a story, then it makes sense because everybody can understand a story. There's a woman who's pregnant. How many people have seen that? I have. Okay, great. There's this big beast that took down a bunch of the stars. What? Has anyone seen a star? I have seen a star.
But I understand that. I'm just saying that my thing is just it's not sequential.
No, I'm referring to what you said. Yeah, I'm referring to what I'm kind of piggybacking off of what you said though.
Yeah.
I'm not disputing what you said. I'm just saying like that the pictures are the things that can go through. If I say there was a cow and there was a sun and there was a moon, everyone on the planet can understand those concepts. And so I'm able to then express my story by using these images because everyone on the planet can at some point understand that. If I say to someone, like, I think Christianity is, I personally believe this, Christianity is the best thing ever. I was having this conversation. I said, you know why I think Christianity makes more sense than any other religion? They're like, why? I said, because every person on the planet can understand the sacrifice of giving your life for something. And that's the center of Christianity. So the God killed himself for his people. That's nuts. Like a mother can understand that. A soldier can understand that. A parent who lives the lover can understand that. Someone who would die for their country can understand. Anyone can understand the concept. Giving my life for something that I love is the greatest sacrifice. That's why I think it is absolutely the most universal concept that we have on the planet. No other concept can match that idea because everybody can get it at some point. Everybody can understand that.
That's what I was trying to get to in my point about he tells us in stories because stories are how we visualize and understanding. That's why in children's church, well, at least when they have the story time, that's why they don't just tell the children the truth.
Right.
They wrap it in a story so that you get the point.
They'll be like, let's read this chapter, children.
The other thing is, John was on an island, which was supposed to be a penal colony, and he was sending messages to the church at the time when the church was being oppressed. And so people were reading the mail.
Coded.
Yes.
So he had to code it with language that the people he was sending it to would understand.
So it's not for us.
Well, no, it is for us, but we would have to understand the code in order to make sense of it. And I'll give you one quick example. Revelation chapter 1, just a very brief one, because I saw this on Tuesday in Grow Group. Revelation chapter 1, verse, let's start at verse 7, right? So, what John seems to be doing here, by the way, there's also a nice resource. Somebody gave me this book, The Revelation of Jesus Christ. I wish I'd read it like early in the year when they gave it to me, because this would make more sense now. But, they helped me to see part of this as well. So before we read Revelation 7, let's read Daniel 7. Just 2 verses in Daniel 7. Quick. Daniel 7. Daniel chapter 7. And I'm saying this to make sense of something so that when you read it the next time, you'll have a little better understanding of what is happening in terms of John talking to the people. So Daniel chapter 7, Daniel sees a vision of 4 beasts. And then verse 9, he says, Daniel 7:9, I watched as thrones were put in place, and the Ancient One sat down to judge. The Ancient One, which would be God the Father, his clothing was white as snow, his hair was pure as the wool. He sat on a fiery throne, the wheels were blazing fire, a river of fire was pouring out. Daniel 7:9. Can't wait. Millions of angels ministered to him, and many more stood to attempt him. The court began its session, the books were opened. Right? He continues, I continued to watch because I could hear a little horn's boastful speech. I kept watching until the 4th beast was killed. His body was destroyed in fire. The other 3 beasts had authority taken to them, but they were allowed to live a little while longer. Verse 13. As my vision continued that night, I saw someone like the Son of Man coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the Ancient One and was led into his presence. He was given all authority, honor, and sovereignty over all the nations of the world, so that the people of every race and nation and language will obey him. His rule is eternal and it will never end. His kingdom will never be destroyed. What we have here, the description of God, what's happening to him. We have the Son of Man coming on the clouds, and he's been given authority, like a coronation almost, right?
That's identical to what happened in Revelation.
I understood half of that. See, and then maybe that I read too much into it. I was with you, verse 9, verse 10. Then we got into 11, and then I saw the beast was killed.
Yeah,
but what the heck?
We skip it today. Today we're not paying attention to the beast.
But I'm just saying that's what's happening to me in Revelation. I'm reading, and then some figurative thing pops up, and I'm like,
but those figurative things are markers.
So one of the things that I had to do when I started reading Revelation this time, and I think I said in one of my things, was I just start ignoring the symbolism for a while and just read through it and grasp the overall concept, and then come back and then start placing because the overall concept is what he's trying, like they were saying, like there's a message that he's trying to get out. He's just using symbolism. So try to grab the message that's coming out conceptually, and then come back. For me, I might not work for you, but for me, and then start applying this.
And I think symbolism works like this. Symbolism, these things are markers of, hey, when you see a symbol, it's saying, hey, you've probably seen me before. This is something you should pay attention to. This is the connecting piece to another part of this book. And that's how the symbols work, because you see this like a son of man, like a son of man. Hey, I heard that somewhere before. Let me go back and see what this guy was talking about. Okay, this book is not sequential. The Bible is not sequential. The Bible is concepts that you can put in any order to make sense of the way we think. So if I'm in the 1800s, it makes sense of my brain. My brain makes sense of these concepts. And so when I see something like a beast, whoa, how many times there's a beast? This may be a marker for something that they're talking about. They talked about a snake. Is that familiar? I guess it may be. A snake that looked like a dragon. Dragons and snakes look like, hey, maybe they're talking about the same. These symbols are like, this is the same idea right here. We're coming back to the same story. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
And remember, we live in a world where good people are not smart and evil people are stupid. That's not how it works. You have to study and show yourself approved. And just like we're studying to show ourselves approved, there are evil people who are going to read it just for the sake of disproving God in his sovereignty. That is their goal in life. And so, for those of us who are connected with the Spirit, in its entirety, we're going to get it. This is not something that you can take a course on and be done. Bam. Because the truth is, if you had to, we've had books like this in college where you've had to get through them in your semester. But this is not something where you're going to get it done and get it all in a semester. This is a lifelong process, and we have to be patient with ourselves with it. You know, you start from kindergarten or preschool, and then you get your bachelor's degree, or you get your training, and we're patient with our educational system, but we're not patient with ourselves in terms of growing in the admonition of Christ. And we also have to look at the fact that God is talking to everyone who wants to hear. Everyone who wants to hear. But there's some people who he has to harden their hearts. He has to block them, and they're not going to get it. Whereas if we're searching after him, we're going to get it. And so if he just made it plain, do this, and certain things don't kill him. Don't do this, don't do that. The simplest things in life, they're plain. There's no confusion. If you close your book and you listen to the Holy Spirit, then you'll be guided through a lot of these other things.
And you probably be all right just staying there.
Yeah.
And you probably would, especially if you know your goal is to follow what the Lord wants you to do.
But even if you end up, even if like me, you're a curious person, because I can't. If there's a puzzle, I need to solve it. If there's something I don't understand, I need to figure that out. I think that's what this is for me. Like, I can't rest until I understand this. Like, so now I'm going to spend the rest of my month and all my spare time trying to understand it. That's what he wants me to do.
And that's what Jesus, that's part of why I gave started with the illustrations that God gives. When you watch throughout the Bible, he does it like that intentionally, because he wants to engage your thinking and your critical and get you to dig deeper, to seek out.
Seek and you will find. When you seek, you got to look
for a relationship,
so,
not just a reading.
Sorry for interrupting your connection.
Right, but verse 11, that beast that happened there, notice we started at 9. But you got lost at the beast because we started at 9. If we had started at 1, those beasts wouldn't be as confusing.
Okay.
I'm saying that to say part of why we get lost in Revelation is because we probably haven't read the entire thing through the lifetime enough to be familiar enough with what's happening.
Yes.
But the people who John was writing to, some of the things that he's saying, they were intimately familiar with. And I'm pointing out just one of them here. So we read this in Daniel. We know that the people John was writing to knew about Daniel. They knew Daniel because they had to learn this when they were growing up as children. So they knew this stuff.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So then John comes and he's given the revelation of Jesus Christ. He's revealing Christ, right? He's sending his letters to reveal Christ. And he's, he was one who was with Christ, and he's got these visions of Christ. Now, what's happening in this Revelation 1, if you notice, he sets up Christ as the guy who was in Revelation 7, verse 7. Revelation 1, verse 7. Look, he's coming with the clouds, and everyone will see him, even those who pierced him, and all the nations of the world will mourn him. Amen. The guy in Daniel 7 was coming in the clouds. So what they're saying is, this Jesus that you know is that guy. Then he goes on a little bit further. He establishes he's revealing Jesus and establishing his authority. I am the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. I was the one who was there before and the one after. So, people at this time had doubts about who Jesus was. They thought he was just this carpenter who died and whatever. But John is now saying, nah, Jared, he's this dude. Remember that dude? This is him.
Also,
and then he establishes his familiarity with the suffering. He identifies with the people. I'm in the suffering there with you, whatnot. And then he says, verse 12. When I turned to see who was speaking to me, I saw 7 gold lampstands. Now they understand what lampstands are and the symbology of lampstands. So they understood what he saw. And standing in the middle of the lampstands was someone like the Son of Man. So it's almost he's saying, the lampstands are the churches, you guys. So he saw them, and in the middle of the churches was someone like the Son of Man, which was the guy from Daniel. So, he's telling them that this is who Jesus is. Then he goes on to say, Daniel, the Son of Man was wearing a long robe and sash on his chest, just like the Ancient of Days. So now this Son of Man is just like this Ancient of Days. He resembles him. His hair is the same color. His skin is the same color. Now this Jesus who we knew as a man is glowing and is almost of the same kind of being as the Ancient of Days of Daniel 7. And so, that's what's happening. Just in this one little section, that's what's happening. So he is establishing Jesus' authority using all of these images and drawing on things that they already have previous knowledge of and making connections.
And I think that you can look at all the Gospels. You can look at all the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. You can look at what they're talking about, and they're all referring constantly to Isaiah, to other books in the Bible, to other stories, to other things that these people already understand. When you look at John, the book of John specifically, it's written in Greek. They use this story in the very beginning that comes from Greek mythology that says the Logos and the Firma and the heaven, all this other stuff. Well, that's the Latin word, but the Logos is here. And now, and so the Greek mythology said the gods were there, humans were there. There was no way for them to communicate. The gods, through Mercury, brought words to men, and then men can communicate with the gods. That's the Greek myth, right? John uses the Greek myth to explain to the Greeks who Jesus was. So they say, in the beginning was the Word. And they're like, yes, this goes along with what we've been taught. And the Word was with God. Oh, that makes sense. And the Word was God. Okay, it comes from God, the mouth of the gods. We get it. And then this Word, the thought of God that we were using to make man understand, God said, I'm going to make my thought become a man. It takes it to the next level. Jesus said, I came to fulfill the law. I didn't come to destroy it. He is the fulfillment. The story of Jesus is the thing that connects all the parts of the Bible. And so everything in the Bible, we can look, they point to this thing, and this thing is pointing back to these things, saying these are the things that prove, this is all the evidence that substantiates your understanding of me now. And when we look at the Bible as a whole, that's why it's so important. We look at the Bible as a whole, these pieces, when we study it, we're like, wait a minute, this is the connection. This is making sense. Because the idea of the Bible is to tell about a story that has been purposely taken out of our memory and twisted. Mm-hmm. And so the book itself is like a code book to people who are prisoners. And we're prisoners and we're speaking the wrong language. It's like, hey, you can really speak this language and understand the reality you see. And that's what this is. That's why it's so hard to understand. Unless you spend time in it, you're not going to get it.
Not only that, because I agree completely with that. When it talks about 11, when it talks about boastful words, 11? Daniel 7, 11, and it's talking about the beast and being slain. And no one wants to be the beast, even if you know you're greedy and you're boastful and you're prideful. No one wants to be the beast. And so if he just came out and said, okay, in the 1200s, it's going to be this. In the 1300s, it's going to be these people. In the 1400s, it's going to be these people. If God came out and if it was just explained in terms of pointing people out, then we'd be dead.
Right.
You know, because people will get to the point where they're like, if we're going to be destroyed anyway, let's just take everybody else out, and we don't have to act. We don't have to act right at all. We don't have to follow rules at all. And so they say a little horn, it talks about a little horn speaking, right? Is that just me? We say his body destroyed.
At the end of the day.
Oh, we're back to Daniel.
At the end of the day, I'm seeing. I usually remain patient. I don't have patience most times with life and my pursuit of happiness. There's a level of patience that I feel Revelation forces someone to have. And you should be a seasoned vet by the time you enter into this book. Personally, this is just me. Because as a novice at the game, been baptized forever, but as a novice at the game, this book, I don't want to read it. That's the best way I can put it.
It doesn't have any sci-fi excitement for you.
See, that's the thing.
I don't like sci-fi.
I don't like.
What
I say is this. I say when I'm reading.
But it's good. I'm enjoying reading it. I'm not like Sharika.
When I try to read something, I'm kind of like Randy, where I need to get it, and I need to get it
immediately.
Yeah, or I start to question, how dumb am I really? I know that I don't know much, but this is making me upset, type of thing. And that's where Revelation is for me. And I'm thinking, even my friends, I talked to like 5-6 different friends, and none of them have ever gotten through the book.
Well, maybe you should stop reading it.
I should. But then I said no.
Why? No. Maybe like if she's gonna keep getting pissed. Maybe
but I'm saying like I'm amongst the pissed though, because my friends are like, yo, I've never made it. You got farther than me. I didn't get that far.
But you know what? I think we do that to the Bible But we don't do that in other real life things.
Yeah, we do.
No,
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we do.
No, we don't.
Jesus
no,
even tells you to do it. Sometimes you just go to bed.
No, sometimes.
No, he didn't say that.
There are people.
That's what
There
I
are
do.
people who don't like the people at the club because they'll slip stuff in their drink, all that kind of stuff. But then they'll go back.
No. They won't go back to the same one for like a couple weeks.
And then there's a class that you have where you don't really get it, but you have to pass it. So you're gonna stick with it. You stick with it, and
you drop it. And you go to another teacher.
And you know what? And you can say that, but not everything has that option. And we use the Bible. No, you don't have the option to look at your major in college and say, listen, I don't like this class. I'm gonna just drop it. You can do that for certain things.
I do this all the time.
But this is
You can do that for certain things. You can do that for certain things, but you can't do that with everything. What I'm saying is, there's certain things that you can't just drop if you don't want to. And now you can put things on hold for a little longer, just like you can put your career on hold. You can put things on hold, but you can't just drop them. I'm just saying we deal with God and with the Bible like that. Like, oh yeah, if I don't feel like it, I just drop it. If I don't like it, I don't drop it.
You're talking about perseverance.
And that's what I'm saying.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. That's why you have to let me finish talking before you cut me off.
No, just say perseverance.
See?
But what I'm saying is,
So go ahead, Kevin.
no,
You
I'm
feel
done.
bad
No,
for me?
because it's not gonna go anywhere else.
You feel bad for me?
Sharika, I want to share experience with you. When I started the Bible reading plan for the first time, I may have said this before, but this is for the benefit of the people listening. When I started my Bible reading plan, I started in August again, and I hated Isaiah and Jeremiah because I didn't know who the people were and I didn't understand what was happening at all. But like you, I stuck with it. And when I came back around, and one of the things about this particular Bible reading plan is that it follows the story, the simple story. So if you're just reading the story, you know, what happened here, or this is what happened, okay, then, and you go around enough times, eventually you start to see the connections. Like I was telling you, part of the reason Esther is in the story is to show what happens when you disobey God. Because if it wasn't for Saul, there would be no story of Esther.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for Saul,
yeah.
there'd be no story of Esther.
Oh, okay.
Because Saul failed to kill everybody.
Right.
He left Agag alive, and Haman was an Agagite. So what I'm saying to say is that the thing makes there's a reason Revelation is at the back, because everything that comes before is all pulled together here like a summary, like a tie together. And so that's why I'm saying be patient and make it go wrong.
So is it okay, like Kendrick said,
Yes.
to skip it for right now?
No, but
it's not.
I would say
Not
go
on
through
purpose.
it. Go
Just
through it
read.
because it registers things in your mind that when you come around the next
There's
time.
nothing wrong with taking a break. There's nothing wrong with taking a step back and being like, you know what? I'm not gonna do Revelation this week. I'm gonna go somewhere else, and then I'm gonna come back. I mean, you can paint it however you want to paint it. There's nothing wrong with it.
While that is true, I would suggest not going that route. Simply because remember the conversation we were having a couple of weeks ago about submitting to God's authority.
Mm-hmm.
This book right here just made that point like 3 times over this week. Because here we have Jesus establishing himself in his authority. Then he gives the messages to the churches. And then the whole issue that you see in here, and we read it the one day. What day was it that they had all the plagues and the people still refused to bow down to him?
It's about the
That's-
authority established.
Kenrick made it. He's creator and savior in his video. He's creator and savior. That's why he deserves to be worshipped. And if you just hold on to that theme as you read, you know, it'll make sense, and you'll be able to take away. You'll be able to take away that little piece. We got a little notification that we are at the end of our time for the first part for, just the beginning part. We normally stay on a little bit longer and continue conversations because as you can see, we're not done yet. I mean, we're not done yet.
That was the introduction.
But some people can only stay on for certain amounts of time, so we try to break it up and allow people to exit gracefully. So what we're going to do right now is just summarize and say, stick with it. It makes sense when you come around. And
look for the positive.
Look for the positive, and requires perseverance. You know, you
Jesus
seek him
took
and
breaks.
find him.
Jesus took breaks.
Look forward to next
There were times when Jesus was like, I need to go and take a break. It's okay to take a break.
And
look for it to make
with
sense.
the
You gotta
Lord,
look for it to make sense.
And he was tempted by the devil when he took breaks, man.
Yeah.
Be ready.
Didn't say get out the word.
We're
Don't do Revelation all the
programmed
time.
we're programmed to look for the holes in everything because of in part because of the scientific method in which we're trained. we're not often encouraged to look for the connections between things. That takes actually a little more that takes a little bit more time and energy, and it's a little more. It takes a little more creativity, and you have to create. You have to bring a spiritual element to it. You got to bring a spiritual element to it. God, look, as human beings, I don't know any of us who can visualize the highest number we can write, which means we can't even use our own systems right. Our brains are not qualified to be able to try to understand God because we can't even think about the numbers we use every day.
I don't want to.
So the idea is God makes himself available to us. We have to open our minds and say, try to make it make sense to me. Okay, this time it didn't make sense to me. Okay, so I'm going to read it again. Please try to make it make sense to me. Because we have, unless we're speaking the language of God, we're in the presence of God, the things of God don't make sense to us. And we've got to be surrounding it. We've got to absolutely immerse ourselves in the presence of God in order to even get one glimpse of what it means. And it makes it worth it. It makes it worth it.
You'll seek me and find me when you seek me with your whole heart. We'll leave you with that thought, and we'll see you on the other side. Rondell, I'm going to ask you to just pray to close out this part right quick, and then we'll break and come back.
Dear and ever loving Father, we thank you once again for the opportunity to share your word and to delve into it and come out with the truths that they are there to be discovered. I pray as we go to the other session that God will be with us. Help us, grant unto us understanding so that we may understand. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
All right, to drink up the plan, share it with a friend.
You know,
Until next time.
why are there only Trinis and Jamaicans that are allowed on this from the West Indies?
You from Nevis?
I'm not from Nevis.
You're like water for the thirsty. I drink. You're like water for the thirsty. I drink. You're like water for the thirsty. I drink. Water for the thirsty.